First tell you who I have on the show, so you stay tuned. It is the amazing, incredible Marianne Williamson. And the reason that she's on the show today, and, honestly, I'm so thrilled that I do this show, and often I'm just so grateful that I have you guys as viewers and listeners, and that I've continued doing this for 3 years. But a day like today is a day that I'm so grateful that I do this show, so I can bring Marianne to you, and we can have the conversation that I'm quite sure we're going to have about spirituality, sacred activism, and politics, and how those all should play together nicely and not be mutually exclusive. As you see, I have many books here. We're not going to be reading them all today, but they're inspiration to me, and I know some to Marianne. Of course, she's written some of them. And we're going to be speaking about Sister Giant and why we should all be there, either live stream or in person. And I think Marianne is ready to come on. I just want to say that I am so excited to have a beautiful author, a person who's inspired so many people, and now with her What's Next, which is really stepping so powerfully into this importance of helping our planet out in a much bigger way, even in such crucial way in politics and sacred activism. So let us welcome Marianne Williamson. Yay! So this is the deal, right? What are we going to be doing? Let's first talk a little bit about Sister Giant, and we will tune down Singing in the Rain. We're going to move right into this serious situation. So I was chatting with you the other day, and I was telling you about how you ran for Congress, as you know.
I remember.
Yes, thanks for sharing, Sonny. And, and kind of the stuff that, sort of the conversations I had at coffees and different things that were going on and hearing kind of here and there, which were things like with people who are normally not in politics and are followers of you, and beautiful spiritual people and sacred people and ministers and all kinds of people, and sort of saying, I came to the party. I really wanted Marianne to win. She ended up not winning. She didn't, make it through. So see, politics are bad. Politicians are bad. And sort of this whole demonizing, this whole negativity and hopelessness about politics. And so I wanted to kind of start with that and sort of chat about that right away.
Okay. Well, their conclusion about my feeling...
And food is coming to you, too, so you can munch
I'm
away.
Fine, thank you. Their interpretation and the conclusions that they've come to about the fact that I did not win my congressional race is very different than the interpretation and the conclusion that I have come to.
Mm-hmm.
In a democracy, somebody's going to win the election and somebody's going to lose it. My faith in the possibilities are only increased by my having run for Congress.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't lose because the system was rigged. I lost because I didn't know enough about what I was doing, never having done it before, and that's a big difference. The system is rigged on a big level, but in terms of the undue influence of money on the system. But that was not a problem here because of the extraordinary generosity of so many people who did respond to my campaign. My average donation was $49. So people did show up, and we raised almost $1 million. So this community does know how to show up. The failures were mine. I'd never done this before, and to be honest, I made every rookie mistake. So if anything, my having run only confirmed my belief that people do want a more meaningful relationship with the public sphere. I think all the people that you're talking about that express their desire for that. And in politics, as with most things in life, Sonny, you win some and you lose some. You don't necessarily, even in politics, I don't see myself running again. However, in politics, our most favorite politicians, didn't win the first time. Barack
That's
Obama
right.
didn't win his congressional race, and then he ran for Senate. So this is not, politics is not about instant gratification.
Well, and you also did quite well. I mean, I really want to give you props for coming in such a close fourth. I mean, that's especially with so many people running.
Well,
so that is, I mean, we must.
Given the district and the fact that Congressman Liu and Ilan Carr both lived in the South Bay, I'm not sure I could have broken through and made it into that top two, as things did turn out. I think that if I'd run a better campaign, I would have come in a close third, absolutely, at least. But Once again, you learn. I had never done this before. And I think I did many things right. And I think that in the areas where we did things right, I think we did impact the ethers. And I said during my campaign, it's not like one woman winning a congressional election is going to make everything okay in the country. And it's not as though if I don't win, the conversation or the struggle ends. And so now I ran for this reason, and I think I was right. I felt that an actual congressional campaign was a way to harness the conversation, unlike any other way. And obviously that was true. But now it's about creating new platforms, new ways to harness the conversation. Your radio program harnesses the conversation. Somebody else writes a book that harnesses a conversation. Somebody else runs for office. It's all about harnessing this energy, which is about the content, not the form. And that's why I'm appreciative of you giving me the opportunity to talk about the Sister Giant Conference, because I feel that in terms of my own ability to contribute in whatever way I can, that the Sister Giant Conference, including this next one coming up specifically, is a way to keep the conversation going, keeping it powerful, and keeping it active.
Yes, and I think let's just right away tell people that it's actually coming up. It's March 28th and 29th.
It's the weekend of March 28th and March 29th, all day on Saturday and Sunday. It's in Los Angeles, but also live streamed. For people in this area, it's at the Concourse Hotel in LA, which is right at LAX. So if people fly in, you're right there already. There's no hassle with that. It's an extraordinary conference. And that night, Saturday night, our keynote speaker is the Vermont Senator, Independent Senator Bernie Sanders, who is as powerful a spokesman for progressive values as exists. And progressive political values, to me, are progressive spiritual values. Now, President Eisenhower said the American mind at its best is both liberal and conservative, and there are certainly spiritual aspects to high-minded conservative values. I'm not saying there aren't. But the conversation that we most need to be having right now is not left or right. It's American. The issues of getting the money out of politics. This is an American issue. This is about the dismantling of American democracy. The Tea Party is as much for overturning Citizens United as are those on the far left. The issue of mass incarceration, racial and economic injustice. This is not a left-right issue.
And it's also a humanitarian issue.
Which is, to me, why it's an American issue.
Right.
The other major issue we're focusing on this time is the corruption of our food supply, regenerative agriculture. You just can't go too many generations messing with your food supply and expect the human race to be okay. Monsanto, because of the unbelievably nefarious and undemocratic over-influence of multinational corporations. This is very true in this area. And Monsanto has its run of the U.S. government and of the FDA. So when you have big agriculture, biotech companies, Syngenta, Monsanto, influencing our food supply and our agriculture the way it is time for the American people to stand up. So you and I were talking earlier about people who say, well, I don't know what I can do. I'm so tired of hearing that from people who haven't actually cracked a book about these issues recently or Googled how they can help or read a newspaper. And Sister Giant is one way you can deepen your understanding. I think that's where a lot of people are stymied, particularly women. They just don't have enough facts. They don't have enough information. They know what their sensibility is, and they're right. Their instincts are correct. But now you need some facts so that you can talk it, so that you can actually stand for it. And that's what, to me, Sister Giant is about. Enter the conversation. We have the best speakers, Elizabeth Kucinich and Jen Kugar and Dennis Kucinich and Tom Hartman and Bernie Sanders. We're going to be laying it down. Lynn Lyman, who you know, of course, very well, and we're at Lisa Bloom. There are going to be people. You have any questions about these issues? You feel that you can't be powerful enough at a dinner party? You feel that you don't know how you can participate at a high enough level in your community and in your country in order to make a difference? Come to Sister Giant, because I promise you at the end of that weekend, you will be so prepared. You will have information. You will have courage. You will have this kick-ass sense of power, and you will also have had a really good time.
An amazing time. I've been to a number of them. Well, actually,
Thank
so
you.
far you've done two. Because I've been to, okay, then I've been to both of them. Okay, good. So 2 for 2, good. The other thing about Sister Giants and the other Sister Giant and the other thing about just politics in general is, again, the education, the knowing, the people. And I mean, I can say for me that I feel like the most important thing to do, I mean, once it gets to the governor or the president, those are the sexy elections. Those are where everybody is. But the point is really knowing who is your assembly person, who is your sheriff in town, who is the state board of equalization, who is the Congress people. I mean, who are the Congress people? You know, these are the people, this is the this is the, how shall I say, we're like the grass and they're the bushes right there. We're meant to chat with them. We can call them, we can meet with them. I mean, this is what our country, it's such an amazing situation that we have. I mean, our government is actually laid out pretty damn well. We're just not really using it. And I think that it feels overwhelming. We don't really know how to find out about our assembly person. But I think that maybe one thing we can even just do is choose one or something. I mean, because sometimes...
Adopt an assemblyman.
I mean, just, yeah, maybe. Because I think people do also, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show, is to turn and to, of course, talk about Sister Giant and move this sort of despair, despondency up to hope so that we can become engaged.
Cynicism is an excuse for not helping.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have some very big picture problems. I think American democracy is basically in a phase right now where it's being dismantled.
Mm-hmm.
The undue influence of money on our politics has created a legalized system of bribery and corruption. And this cannot and will not be changed from the inside. It will only be changed if the people of the United States stand up and create the kind of movement that is now forming to overturn the Supreme Court's decision called Citizens United.
Yes.
And until we actually do take a stand, and there will be a panel on Sunday. Tom Hartman on Saturday will be talking about the history of corporatism, because that's what we have now. We reverted to an aristocratic situation. It's a corporatocracy now, but it is a form, archetypally, of aristocracy. It is the idea that there are a few people. That's why we don't really function as a democracy now. We function as an oligarchy, where the power shots are called by a relatively few people. Mm-hmm. And that is a direct repudiation of what American democracy was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So, from Tom Hartman talking about the history of all this to Bernie Sanders representing and talking Saturday night about what the politics of possibility is this is what it looks like when a senator stands for the people. And then on Sunday, a panel that is moderated by Cenk Uygur talking about Wolfpack, talking about Lawrence Lessig's New Hampshire Rebellion, talking about Moby. There are organizations that are at work on this. We have to have a constitutional convention. We have to have a constitutional amendment. When the suffragettes went to work, the suffragette movement, it was going to take a constitutional amendment, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which would determine that women in this country could vote. Mm-hmm. It took the Voting Rights Act to break the back of legalized segregation and white supremacy in the South. It takes actual political movements. Mm-hmm. And that's what the civil rights movement was. That's what the women's suffragettes movement was. It took the abolitionist movement to initiate the kind of changes brought about by the Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation, and the amendment to outlaw slavery. This is not the first generation to be confronted by extremely undemocratic forces in our midst. We were born, for God's sake, on one hand with this extraordinary burst of freedom, but at the same time, genocide of the Native Americans and slavery, for goodness sake. So we've always been born, we were born of that dichotomy. Mm-hmm. But the journey of American history is that generation after generation, there are Americans who stand up and repudiate it. Mm-hmm. So what if people during, these other eras of historical change had just thrown up their hands and said, well, this is the way it is, and they're all bad, and there's nothing we can do. There's nothing brave about that. There's nothing beautiful about it. There's nothing spiritual about it.
Exactly.
Complacency is not spiritual. That's only no serious spiritual path gives any of us a pass on caring for for other sentient beings. Mm-hmm. There's profound unnecessary human suffering in this country and in this world for the simple reason that America is living less of its purported dedication to true democratic ideals. And if that's going to change, it's because we change it.
That's it. And so specifically what we're looking at this point is knowing that first of all, having the knowledge that there are people, there are organizations that are doing things
and
right now.
And there are Congress people. There are politicians. This blanket just like vilifying all politicians, which usually comes from people who don't really know. They haven't really read the paper. When I hear most people saying they're all bad, have you really looked? Have you really looked into all of them? Because the truth of the matter is there are Congress people, and on, like you were saying, local and state levels, absolutely, but also in the U.S. Congress. Mm-hmm. There are Congress people and there are senators who are in there day in and day out, taking the actual hits.
Yes.
We should should know who they are. We should be supporting them. So, of course, it's easy to say, oh, they're all bad. Really?
Right.
Because I want to tell you something. I ran for office, and there's something about having run. You know, some things become cellular.
Yes,
And,
yes.
to be honest, it was the most brutal experience of my life, but it was also the most exhilarating. I saw some of the darkest stuff that people have to show. I saw some of the lightest stuff that people have to show.
Yes.
And it has given me only greater respect for the possibilities and for some of the people who are already there doing it day in and day out.
Absolutely. And I, as many people know, I have family in politics, and some of the things that I hear is just generally, follow. It's sort of like go to work with a congressperson day and just see if you can keep up with them,
Right,
with
that's
eating
it.
your Wheaties and
Yeah.
having 5 lattes.
Yeah.
And I mean, like Congressman John Lewis, I just always love to, have a shout out to him because, I mean, he's still in Congress. He was a freedom fighter. I mean, he's been
That's right.
working it for so many years, and he's sort of the little engine that could. He
Yeah.
just stays with it, stays with it, stays with it. And there are other people like this. I mean, it's not as if 436 people are all, demons and devils.
Absolutely.
And so, again, with the hope and again
Right.
with the education, so we can, so with Sister Giant, with knowing what's actually happening. I mean, so again, first of all, I mean, I don't want this to be a complete commercial for Sister Giant, but at the same time, I feel like most of the people who listen to me and watch me are high consciousness. And I always say I don't need to say to you because you do it anyway, but I always say to my authors and people who come on, I say, don't talk down to people, just talk to the highest level person in the room, and
Right.
don't worry about repeating because that's why God invented repeat and pause. So don't worry about it. But I know what you guys are up to out there, and I know that you want to make a difference, and this is one of the definite ways to do it, and to be educated and to come to something like this, and then but to have or come to this specifically and to have the hope that we can make a difference, and we have to make a difference. It's not even about we can, we kind of have to.
Well, first of all,
I mean, come on, people.
I have 2 things to say to that. First of all, it's fun. These conferences are fun.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Yeah,
Just
they're awesome.
yeah, it's fun.
awesome.
That's number one. And number 2, you make a difference just by showing up at something like that. Because the Course in Miracles says ideas grow stronger when they're shared.
Yes.
And then also when you have someone like a Senator Sanders who's willing to speak at something like Sister Giant, there's a reason for that. It's because Sister Giant has gotten a reputation for being a deep conversation that includes a lot of people. And so that right there, you have to lay claim to a space. And Sister Giant lays claim to a space. But it has to be all of us contributing our part by showing up, bringing your friends, putting the share graphic on Facebook. Go to sistergiant.com. Go to, if you even go to my Facebook page and you see the share graphics for it. I mean, this idea that there's nothing we can do when, in fact, anytime you do any of those things, you are kicking ass in your own way that day.
Absolutely. And like just a small little example of this about why it makes a difference that we're involved in our politics. I mean, it does make a difference for our kids, for our life all the time. We sort of think, well, someone else will take care of it, or it doesn't matter. I mean, I just heard the other day that like in California, we finally got a ban for the plastic bags, which, by the way, people who are any younger than, they came in 74, we can live without them. It's really okay. But now there's a hold on the ban for California, so it's going to be back on the ballot. And so, I mean, there are regions that are still banning them, but again, it's going to be an issue. So pay attention to this stuff, guys.
And there's something else about what you just said that's very interesting about politics. When someone said the famous line, when someone said to Benjamin Franklin, "Do we have a republic, sir?" And he said, "Yes, if you can keep it." Eternal vigilance is the price of citizenship in a vital democracy. So what you just said is interesting. Even when we win, you can't then look away, because as soon as you win, the very next morning, those who opposed you will be seeking to get it on the ballot again. So even when you've won something, look at the Voting Rights Act. It was established, and now they're chipping away at it.
Yeah.
We thought that Roe v. Wade, it was just, abortion rights were just established. Now they're chipping away at it. So you've got to remain ever vigilant.
Yes.
You're not always going to get what you want when you want it, i.e., so I didn't win, suck it up and move forward. In my own personal journey, it took me 6 months to, I really had to heal personally. But then, after 6 months, I had done my inner work. I'd burned through it. There was a lot I had to move through. But after that, and you've reached that point, which for me was 6 months, okay, keep going. That was spilt milk. What can we do next?
Yeah.
And that's how you have to be in life.
Yeah.
To be masterful at anything.
That's right. That's
Stay
right.
in the moment. That was then, this is now.
Exactly. I heard something very wise recently that someone said. It might have been Michael Beckwith, but I'm not quite sure. But they said that the quality of our lives are determined by the questions we ask. And I love that so much. It just shifted a lot of things for me even in the last week. And it's like, okay, so let's ask the questions. Let's change that conversation up. Let's ask the questions that really make sense now. Like for you, you were asking some questions a year ago. Now you're asking other questions, right?
Well, yes and no. I think the most fundamental question for all of us to ask is, how can I serve? That question doesn't change. Given circumstances
shifts.
today, but it doesn't in a way. That's a through line. No matter what the circumstances are, in this day, in these circumstances, how can I contribute best?
Yes.
And so I think, that's the high-minded of conservative, those things that do not change. So the form of the answer shifts, but the content of the question remains the same. How can I serve? What can I do to help? And what I think a lot of people, from a spiritual perspective, where great irony comes through, I speak on Monday nights, as you know, on the spiritual issues. And the irony here that we talk about quite a lot is that when you're only concerned with yourself, you end up not serving yourself at the higher level. When you are concerned with how you might show up for something bigger than just your individual self, that's how you actually raise the vibrational frequency of your life, which actually lifts the tenor of your own individual existence.
So true.
That's
so
the best,
true.
highest form of self-care,
Yes.
is to play it big as a citizen of the world.
That's so true. And again, so let's talk a little bit more about that, because I feel like, again, this sort of separation of spirituality, sacredness, politics, sacred action, activity. Let's chat a little bit about that, or let you chat about it.
Well, to me, spirituality is the path of the heart. And nature, there is imprinted on all of life this intentionality of the universe to take all things to their highest level. So a natural intelligence turns an embryo into a baby, and a natural intelligence turns the bud into a blossom, and a natural intelligence turns the acorn into an oak tree. That is the way nature operates. The same natural intelligence already, just like the acorn carries the blueprint, the architectural blueprint within it that would turn it into an oak tree, you and I carry the architectural blueprint by which we might become the women we are capable of being. The difference between us and the acorn is that you and I can say no. That's what free will gives us. Now, our serving the flow of that natural intelligence by which we might become the people we are capable of being, and which occurs naturally to the extent to which we surrender into that flow, is the purpose of our lives, which is the same thing as saying the purpose of our lives is to be happy, because that's the only place where happiness lies. Now, the reason democracy matters, the reason freedom matters, the reason liberty matters is because it means the person is given the space to be all that they can be, to take your wingspan as high and as wide as you yourself, through the natural intelligence within you, can make it. If you are enchained, we know if you're enchained internally, you just can't do it. And if you are enchained externally, you can't do it. So a caste system, a slavery, obviously, any kind of oppression, anything that says you can't. You can't because of your sex. You can't because of your color. You can't because of your sexuality. You can't because of your money. You can't because of your background. You can't because of your class. You can't. Nature doesn't say you can't. Nature invites you to be everything that you can be. So to the best of our ability, our job is to create a society which invites you to be the best that you can be. And that's how society wins. So anything that would limit a human being is a spiritual issue, because it's limiting the flow of nature through that person. That's why this matters. It's a spiritual issue. The founding of our democracy was not just a radical move in political history, but in the evolution of the human race. That it wasn't just one class that would be able to succeed. That it wasn't who your parents were. This was radical. It was radical then, and it was radical now. So it was a repudiation of the aristocracy. Now we have subconsciously recreated the aristocracy. This corporatocracy over the last few decades, just siphoning off huge resources, material resources, into the hands of a very few people. What that means when you say only a few people can afford health care, only a few people can afford education, Only a few people can afford to make meaningful influence on your political system. What are you saying? It means that the rest of the people are then limited in their opportunities to truly thrive, because the social order is throwing logs in their way every time they like to walk forward. And for those of us who are interested in transformation, we know it's all about removing the barriers to the full expression of our true self. But that job, it needs to be done both internally, removing barriers, and also externally removing barriers as well.
Oh my God. John, can we have some applause? That was, I mean, I always wonder what's going to happen when you come on the show, and you always exceed my expectations. One thing I want to share with you, thank you so much for that, because that was brilliant. Well, you know, we're going to get that and put that everywhere,
You're
that
so
bit
sweet.
right there. And I want to share with you, I saw you last week and I asked you, this is a part of your life that's so important. You're doing politics, and that's something that you do so beautifully, and it's so important. Sister Giant is so important. And writing books like Healing the Soul of America, which is, I'm like, I should be your like poster girl for this book. Because
You are. You're so good to me, Sonny.
I love this book because of what, and I wanted, well, and it says right here, reclaiming our voices as spiritual citizens. One thing I want to share with you is last week you gave me some books for a friend of mine, and she's, I'm going to send a shout out to her, Roya Tabrizi, who is literally the queen of Novato, and everyone who lives in Novato knows what I'm talking about. And I gave her your books, and she literally burst into tears. And I mean, and she just looked at the titles and she burst into tears. I said, "Oh, and by the way, Marianne wrote to you," and she's just couldn't handle it. She's like, "It's too much. It's too much."
If there are any that she doesn't have, just come back and go to my bookshelf, and I'd be honored to give you whatever she might not have already.
Well, she is again, I mean, I'm sharing this with you because she's such a gift to so many people. And just in the way that you work, you doing what you do, writing the books you do, saying what you say, having the presence you have, holding the place you do in the world, how much it affects other people. When we constantly talk about the ripple effect, that is why I'm talking about that right now, because the ripple effect that you affected for her will affect so many people, not just her. So bless you and thank you from Roya.
And right back at you, because you're doing the same thing. You know, you and I were talking before about the difference between form and content. This is a peaceful revolution of consciousness that's going on. Some people, your natural intelligence leads you to media. Somebody else's natural intelligence leads them to work in the arts. Somebody else's natural intelligence leads them to the sciences or to whatever. And none are any more or less valuable than any others. It's the depth of our conviction and the level of our service. And for those of us who are women, sisterhood. And so I want to take this moment to acknowledge you, Sonny.
Oh, thank
ever
you.
since I met you, I have never gotten anything from you other than go girl and how can I help? How can I help?
Thank you.
That is the fuel. That's what makes it all happen. You go, how can I help? And you embody that. And I hope that you realize the ripple effects you have, not only in your support of individuals, such as I've experienced, but also through this program and everything that you do. Because sometimes I think in you, maybe you fail to appreciate the power of your own work.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Oh my gosh, thank you. Wow. Well, I want to talk about, of course, anything you want to talk about. Can we talk about Healing the Soul of America a little bit?
Yeah.
Because, again, this book, I think, is so important, and I recommend everyone getting it. First of all, you break it down so that everyone can understand fairly high concepts, and really talking about slavery in a very real way, in the real truth about what we ended up doing, the white people coming to the Americas, many aspects, Vietnam, I mean, many aspects about how to heal and how to, first of all, tell the truth about it and be more comfortable about it. You know, I have so many friends who are from Europe and from South Africa and from Russia and different places talking about racism in our country. And they say, whoa, you know, it's like, it's so difficult because everybody has a sort of energy and sort of talk around things. And there's not that clarity that they find in other cultures in other parts of the world. And, you know, it's kind of true. I mean, I feel a little more like it's broken down in my world, but I know it's sort of just, you know, ubiquitous in our country and all these other elements. So that's what I think Healing the Soul of America brings, as well as many other things.
When you are in your own individual life, you might be living today, but you are at the effect of something that happened 20 years ago. And you go to therapy and you go to support groups, you go to 12-step, whatever, because you have to clear it. It's not over till it's cleared. And that means you have to really look at what happened. You have to feel through it. You have to forgive who you need to forgive. You have to apologize to who you have to apologize to. Otherwise, it remains a toxicity.
Yeah.
So what has happened with slavery is that what has happened in our history, first of all, one generation did abolish the institution, which, of course, we all celebrate. But the end of slavery did not end the problem because, in fact, racism burrowed even more deeply into the American South at that time. You get the phase of terrible white supremacy and institutionalized segregation, and that was not countered until the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s. So you have the Civil War over in 1964. You have the federal troops that left the South, I think, in 1887. I'm not sure. Then by the end of the 19th century, you had all the period of the lynchings, just the absolute murder of black people towards the beginning of the 1900s. That only got worse and worse and worse until Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement. So even then, one would not say that racism, it's like one generation could get rid of slavery, but getting rid of an external institution does not get rid of racism itself. That's the work we have to do. Now, what interests me, Sunny, and I'm Jewish, and so I'm very aware, as we all should be, because all of us should be aware of all of these issues, is the history of the Holocaust and Germany and so forth. After World War II, Germany did not minimize what had occurred. Full, complete, 100%. There is no but, maybe, kind of, but, well, it really wasn't that bad. Well, it's over. Let's not talk about it. That's not where Germany went. They went into full. Not only were they vanquished politically, obviously, and through the war, but the generation after World War II and the generation since have taken full responsibility, including reparations, billions of dollars in reparations. For whatever reason, when it comes to slavery in America, even though you now have a generation of Germans, so the Holocaust, the war was over in 1945. It hasn't even been 100 years. And you know what? It's amazing how flushed out it is in that younger generation. We have an institution that was over in 1865, and it's still not flushed out. Why? We have not totally. People say we've done enough. What is it we've done? What is it you think we've done? We never paid reparations. We act like reparations, which obviously wouldn't be to individuals. Reparations would be in the form of a huge, probably $200 billion economic and educational opportunity program. Why do we? First of all, we have not officially apologized the way we might. There has never been the major sort of mea culpa that we need to make ritualistically. And we have never paid reparations. So it's still in the bloodstream. It's still in the psychic. It's still toxic. There's still ambivalence. There's still angst. There's still anxiety. There's still guilt. And that will be there, I'm afraid, until we take full ownership in the way that we have not. And this to me is where the interface of consciousness and politics comes in. A collection of people is just a group of individuals, and those issues that rule individual transformation rule societal transformation as well.
And with that, I mean, I just wrote down the word, which isn't really a word, diseducation. It's sort of, there's this kind of, what did happen and what do we do about it, and, affirmative action that took place at a certain time, and all of these sort of, like you say, I mean, it is so not flushed out.
I wrote an article that was on Huffington Post that people can find on the net called Race and Repentance in America that does a little bit of a thumbnail sketch of what the history has been, because I think when you actually look at the history of race in America, a lot of people, like you said, there's people, they seem so ignorant of what went down here, but most importantly of how many of our social and economic policies are legacies of slavery.
Yes.
3 popes ago, John Paul had a phrase called the Purification of Memory. He did a lot of apologizing. He apologized for the Inquisition. He did a lot of apologizing for historical misdeeds of the Catholic Church. And he said that until the apology is made, you remain unconscious of the ways you continue to reenact the sin. Isn't that profound?
Yes.
And that's how I feel America is. Too many Americans don't realize things that occur that are just, you're still doing it, aren't you?
Yeah.
But people really don't see that, and that's why history is so important, and why, this is such a whole systems breakdown. It's such a whole systems problem, because we have people even today who are seeking to remove from our textbooks, and in some places removing from our textbooks the actual historical lessons that every American generation should be brought up with.
So back to education.
Education is such a huge one, and civics. Not only our history, but also learning civics. Because if you don't educate a population in what their freedoms are, then they don't know to yell and scream when those freedoms are being taken away.
That's exactly right. As a matter of fact, I want to talk about one of the speakers, Tom Hartman, who I love.
I love him too. You're going to have to fight me to that door. We're going to have to compete for that.
Oh my God! I mean, he's only 63. I mean, like, how does he know as much as he does? And
He's a genius.
He's just unbelievable. And there is an organization called Project Censored. It actually came out of a college in Santa Rosa, up in Northern California, and they take articles. They have college students who find articles and information and things that happened that never made it into the papers or were about to get into the papers and were cut. And they do a book every year. This is Censored 2014. And these are all, there are 25 articles in here that never made it to the papers. So guys, check this out. And Tom Hartman was given, pardon me? Oh, okay. Yes, I will be happy to. And Tom Hartman was given an award from them. I don't know the exact award 4 times. So I think that he was bringing forward things like that. But, again, it is digging. And maybe it is because we feel that we have so much to do all the time and all that, and how to, sort of chip away or navigate the fields of these things. I mean, maybe it is taking, like we were laughing about it earlier, taking on an assembly, sort of a person or a congressperson or even the sheriff in your town or someone, but maybe starting there and knowing a bit about it.
I read Daily Cause every day, KOS. That's
Listen to
one.
Tom Hartman's show, by the way.
And I watch Tom every day. Tom
Yeah.
Hartman, Daily Cause, KOS, yeah. Common Dreams.
Yeah, because I mean, even I know a lot of us watch NPR all the time, and that's pretty good. I think we can go deeper than that, but I think that's part of the situation, because again, like you, I learned this as Sister Giant. This is one of the tidbits I learned, that women need to be, what is it, about 80% sure about facts before they'll share it at a cocktail party, and men are about 20%.
Yeah, that's
I said that to a man, and he was like, I don't even know if it's that much.
Yes, that was a sociological study. You're absolutely right. I'd forgotten about that. It was a study I read, said for a man to feel confident enough to express his opinion verbally, he has to be 20% sure of his facts. For a woman to feel confident enough to express her opinion verbally, she has to feel 80% confident of her facts, which goes back to Sister Giant, which is why I initially did Sister Giant, because I felt too many women were not speaking up. There's that, and that's why they started, by the way, speaking of that, as women's conferences. I just feel since my congressional run, this is so genderless. This is an American conversation. So I want men to know, Sister Giant, you come too. This is not just a women's conference.
I mean, you have men speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have men speakers as well as women, even when it was just a women's conference.
Right, yeah. And also, speaking of the new Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander, the sort of where it's moved to as far as slavery goes, and that aspect. I mean, and again, everything affects all of us. I mean, we in the spiritual community talk about we're all connected, we are
think
all
we're
one,
in a bubble, though.
all that,
Yeah.
and yet the point is, I mean, it is just really the damn truth. I mean, there's no getting away from it.
There's an interesting thing there
No
too,
way.
Sonny, which is that sometimes we allow ourselves to fall into this delusion that problem is over there and it will never affect my personal life. And so whatever is a public issue, if it is a broiling public issue, it will become a personal issue for you. And then when and if it becomes a personal issue for you is when you wake up. This is what I think is happening with the food movement. Multinational corporations have been dominating public policy for decades now. A lot of people kind of didn't notice till it was their food. And so now people are like, whoa, what's going on? Honey, it's been going on.
Yeah.
And once again, that's why we're taking the whole corruption of the food supply as a big issue
task
in,
here, yeah.
in Sister Giant, and I think a lot of people have recently and are currently entering the whole larger public conversation because of what is happening with GMOs, business agriculture. What's technological? What's the word I'm looking for? Industrialized agriculture,
exactly.
and so forth, and the way animals are treated, and the whole thing.
And all of that, and again, back to the education and feeling empowered, and again, feeling that we then, when we're educated, then we can do something. We can't go anywhere without knowing anything.
That's right.
And the education, we were chatting earlier about my son. I was always talking about my kids and my son's friend Kyle, who just graduated from Berkeley. And we were chatting about, politics, and he's kind of shifted. Even my son said, whoa, I can barely keep up with him. And he's read everything on this table, by the way, except this, but I sent it to him. Healing the Soul of America. But he's halfway through it, and he loves it, by the way.
Good.
Just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you.
But, Kyle was just sort of like, oh my God, every politician needs to be called to task. And actually, he's right.
It should be.
He's
and that's
angry
your right
and
as
he's
a citizen.
frustrated, but as a young person,
Right.
24, that's what shifts stuff
Right.
anyway. The
That's
complacency, again, is
That's
not
right.
where it is.
That's right. And people
Cracking through.
Yeah, people need to remember your Congress people work for you.
Yes.
You're the boss here. But if you don't act like the
Exactly.
boss, how you can be? Why are you surprised that that your employee is behaving in ways that maybe aren't what you would have wished? Also, I want to say
Yes.
something else. On the right, among conservatives, they not only prepare activists, they prepare candidates. Too often on the left, they prepare activists, but not enough concentration on running candidates. That's another way I think Sister Giant can help, and that's part of the emphasis, is that people who think, I might run for office someday. That is part of our conversation at Sister Giant as well. I think I've done mine. I think it's for somebody else to do now.
Yeah.
But I have so much information to download, both from things I got right as well as things I got wrong, and that will definitely be part of the agenda on Sister Giant, is a whole committee about that. Or would you maybe think, and what you were saying earlier, because some people that wouldn't start with a congressional race, but what is the school board position in your area? What is there on a local level where maybe would be a good way for you to enter the scene? There's a political consultant named Colleen Crowley from Northern California. She will be with us on Sunday afternoon, so there will be a lot of support for that. This should be, I see it's such an incubator for conscious citizenship, including the possibility of conscious candidacy for anyone who feels like one day you might go there.
And there are a few people at the Sister Giants in the past who have decided to go forward and run,
Like
including,
me.
well, you had, it was finally at one point you were like, I keep talking about this. I've got to, put my money where my mouth is, literally.
There came a time.
And others. And in Healing the Soul of America, I love how you break it down in here about how to write letters, who to write letters to, how to do it.
Phone call.
And phone
Just
calls.
call. Most
and
people
all
don't
of-
know. Just call your congressman today. Call
Right.
your senator.
And they will, and certain messages, messages will get through. I remember when we were, a friend of mine was working with the electric car thing and still does. And we saw the movie Who Killed the Electric Car. And then after we had a small kind of gathering of people, and we were all like, well, what do we do? What do we do? And he said, put by your phone, the Toyota and a couple of these car companies, just buy your phone and every week call and say, so when are you getting an electric car? Because it's about it is about the money. It is a business.
Of course it is.
And so when you do things like that, people will kind of shake it up and listen to you. It's like entertainment. What ends up getting more money at the box office? People listen to that and do more of it. So all of it, whether we like it or not, part of it is a business. And it is a business, and people will listen.
And that's not even something we don't like.
Right,
in and of itself.
it's not completely to be.
I want to go back a little bit also to the constituent phone call. Mm-hmm. Most people don't realize they can call their congressman, they can call their senator. You just look online for the switchboard at the U.S. Congress. Now, obviously, you're not going to be put through to the congressman. You're not going to be put through to the senator. However, if you call, and this is news to a lot of people, if you call and say, my name is so-and-so, I live in such and such, I'd like to make a constituent call, please. They say, sure. You say who you are, you say where you live, and you say what your opinion is. Now, the person who took the call, and that's part of their job, will say, I will let the senator know, I will let the congressman know, which they will not do unless they get enough calls that day. And it is not that many calls that need to come in before it is listed as something. I think it's something like 12 calls have to come in to a congressman's office for it to be listed, for it to be something that at the end of the day, the aide says, well, Congressman, we did get calls today about such and such.
Oh my God, John, what do you love that or what? I mean, that is, it's like, okay,
People
take
don't
it
realize.
into our own hands.
Right.
Well, I think that's what has happened, having us be so big. I mean, in the olden days, it used to be people got together and, would have some pie and whatever, 100 years ago and chat about what was up and raise Cain, literally.
Well, that's where
that's what we're not doing.
Right. That's where the word lobbyist comes from. It's people who just sit around the lobby and wait for the president to come in so they could talk to him in the lobby.
Do
Isn't
you
that funny?
love it?
But also you said about raising Cain. Yeah, there's part of a rebellious spirit that's very American. It's not negative. And that's another thing where so-called spiritual people get confused sometimes. Like, there's nothing negative about yelling fire if, in fact, the house is burning down. The most positive thing you can do is yell fire.
Exactly.
And I think that's what we need to be doing about our country and about American democracy today, about our food supply, about mass incarceration, about Citizens United. We need to be yelling fire. That's the most positive thing we could do. There's nothing holy about complacency or positive about it.
Absolutely. And Martin Luther King would certainly agree with us about that on many, many subjects. It wasn't just about civil rights. It was about the food supply. It was about how we were handling ourselves politically and where we were pointing guns and what we were feeding our children and many, many other things. And anger sort of has, I mean, obviously there's a way to deal with it, but to say I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, as long as it's not demonizing individuals.
Exactly.
And that there is a line there. I mean, somebody showed me a film the other day to show at Sister Giant, and it had a snarkiness about it. And that there is a line there that we hold, but I think also that's something very unique about Sister Giant and about our conversation. This is not about demonizing individuals, and to the extent to which someone does that, that is not part of the new transformational conversation.
And that's what that's why I was so happy you were coming on the show and hearing a little bit of that going on in the last number of months and just in my life about people sort of demonizing blanketly and, like we were saying earlier, not really knowing who they're demonizing and just kind of maybe hearing something from someone else or whatever. I remember when my son, my younger son Chandler, was young, and he said to me one day, because we were watching politics and doing different things, and he said, Mom, are we Democrat or Republican? And I said, well, honey, it's not a DNA thing. But a lot of people think it is, right?
I say I would have told my daughter what we were.
But it's
I thought it was, actually.
Well, I laid out, kind of what was what. And he said, well, he made his decision. And I was, grateful for it. But that's all I'll say. But, again, it's sort of the conversation you hear with other people. And to be able to fill our own minds with our own thoughts and our own decisions and what's in our heart and what's in our direction and what we feel, like you say, feeling in our gut, feeling in our heart, to know that if then other people lay stuff on us, it's just something they heard.
You got the facts.
You got the facts.
I feel with some traditional political thinkers, in order to really school them on some of the transformational principles and how they apply, would take a very long time. But with transformational thinkers, give me one weekend and I can lay it down for you in terms of political facts. It won't take long. Just come right here. In this case, March 28th, 29th in Los Angeles.
Yeah, so it's in LA. And so again, let's just, because I know John's going to tell us our time's running out. So I just want to, of course, remind everybody that I was speaking to Marianne Williamson. This is Singing in the Rain, which I know you all know by now, I certainly hope. And again, the power of one, my tagline, which is what it takes, and then the ones coming together. And so it's sistergiant.com?
sistergiant.com.
Okay, go to it, people. Check it out and just see what's up. And all kinds of, you're going to be seeing it here and there. And if you do see it, just throw it on your Facebook page and join us if you can't be here. Although the weather is gorgeous here. So wherever you are, you may want to just come here for the weekend.
And also the fact that the Concourse Hotel is right there at LAX. So if somebody flies in, it's like right there, literally. You don't have to get a cab. You don't have to do anything. It's right there.
Yeah, they'll shuttle you back and forth. It's so easy. easy that way. And so I'm going to let, John, I'm going to let Marianne kind of speak us out. I'm going to thank you. I'm going to thank you so much for being here again, for all that you do on so many levels. I mean, just countless levels. And just, I'm going to let you just talk us out.
Okay. I will talk
I would say, some people say pray us out, but I'll let you talk us out.
I will say, number one, that I'm very grateful to be here. And I will say that while I do think there are extraordinary problems that confront us as a nation and as a species now, I also think that there is an endless possibility for transformation. I believe in the possibility of infinite possibility. And I believe that just like in our individual lives, when we have a problem, there's an invitation there to become the people that we need to be, in the presence of whom breakthroughs will automatically occur. And I think that that's true for us as a species now. We need to evolve into a new state of our personhood. And every time we have these conversations, every time we take part in these kinds of activities, we are working on the evolution of our own personhood. And then as enough of us do this together, we're then talking about a collective evolutionary shift. And not only is that possible, but anything short of that, and I believe humanity is headed in a catastrophic direction.
So amen to that, people. So let us all see you at Sister Giant. Until next time, bye-bye. This is Sunny Chayes and Marianne Williamson saying bye for now.